Hi, everybody. My name is Denny Sabu, and welcome back to day 3 of our Cyber Chat series. So just to recap, this is day 3 of 5. We've had presentations the last 2 days. If you missed out on those, don't worry. You should be able to check out the recording on the main homepage. And we have some really cool presentations coming up tomorrow and Friday. So let's go ahead and get started with what scares a cyber attacker. And more importantly, what scares a cyber attacker and how do you stop that cyber attacker? So we've gone ahead and broken this down into 3 different sections. One is going to be understanding the attacker. Who are they? What do they want? Then we're going to talk about a technology that really scares the attackers. Again, that's going to be instrumental in stopping these people. And then finally, we're going to talk about things that you can do today that will help you understand where your organization stands in how you would respond to these attackers. So understanding the attacker. This is a slide that I borrowed from the FBI on a presentation that they gave about a year ago down in Atlanta, and it kind of talks about the current threat spectrum. On the left-hand side, we've seen these people for a while now. We've seen the hacktivists, we've seen the cyber criminals, think ransomware, and we've seen the insider threats. However, we're starting to see, or at least be more aware of the right-hand side of this, specifically the espionage and warfare part of it. And I want to just spend a little bit of time talking about this, just so that we understand who these people are, and what kind of access they have. When you think about it, you should think of them as being similar to the NSA in terms of their sophistication, their budget, and the support they have behind them. These people are capable of orchestrating really, really big attacks against really complicated systems. And unfortunately, they have access to things that we have no idea about. All the time you hear about zero-day attacks. These nation-state actors probably have repositories of thousands of these attacks that they're just waiting to use. So it's important that you understand that the threat landscape is changing, and unfortunately, it's getting worse. Just to go over some of the numbers that I found really interesting, the U.S. Treasury Department has a department that focuses on cybercrime, and they did a report on the last 3 years of ransomware. And they looked at the top 10 ransomware, and they monitored certain Bitcoin wallets to see how much money these guys were pulling in. So again, remember, this is just 3 years and just the top 10 ransomware, and they pulled in about $5.2 billion. And what's even scary about it is this number is just going to continue to rise. In all of 2020, there was probably around $400 million paid out as ransomware payments. In the first half of 2021, we kind of beat that number, unfortunately, by 200 million. We paid out around 590 million in just the first half. If it continues tracking that way, we're on track to pay out in just 2021 more than we paid out for the entire past decade. And I just want to highlight this because this kind of creates this feedback loop, right? Where attackers have some kind of software, they deploy, they attack, and they get money. They use that money, $5.2 billion, to kind of increase the sophistication of their attacks, and they do it all over again. So every time they get paid, they're creating better software, and it becomes that much harder to defend against. So with that, I want to talk about this technology that could scare an attacker. But before we talk about scaring attackers, I want to talk about something that should scare you. 197. 197 might not be scary, but 197 days is the number of days that an attacker will typically sit on your network undetected. That's time that they have to move around your network, collect and exfiltrate your data, and plan what their next move is. 197 days, that's the better part of a year that an attacker has a license to do whatever they want. So how can you help get this number down? We really think a super effective way is using something that's known as a honeypot. Now, when you talk about honeypots, there's going to be a bunch of different explanations or different definitions for them, but ultimately a honeypot is a type of machine that's designed to detect some kind of unauthorized access. There's, again, a bunch of different flavors. There are pure honeypots, research honeypots, but once you boil away all that, it comes down to basically 2 categories: low interaction and high interaction. Both of these should be somewhat of an attractive target to an attacker. They should be incentivized to interact with this somehow. And we get this question a lot about whether honeypots have to be physical appliances or should they be virtual machines. And typically the answer is unless the solution that you're going with specifies something, you can really deploy them wherever you want. As long as you can get the correct setup as far as where you want it on your network and the connections needed for it, being physical or virtual doesn't really make too big of a difference. So low interaction and high interaction, these aren't exactly kind of foils of each other, but they do have similarities where one is stronger than the other, or one does something differently than the other. The low interaction honeypots are going to focus on core services. Think things like SSH, or something that an attacker is going to be likely to go after. If they know that there's a vulnerability with SSH, that's an attack vector. The honeypot is going to make those things appear to be available so that an attacker is enticed to come and interact with it. But there's not going to be a whole lot of things going on that honeypot. It's a very simple machine. So even if an attacker does attack it and they're able to compromise it, there's really nothing on there. It's just a plain machine with some code that really doesn't matter to you as an end user. On the flip side, the high interaction honeypot is going to simulate real activity. What this means is you're basically setting up a mirror of your production environment, but everything is fake. This means you have fake data, fake systems, and fake computers that this machine is talking to. And this becomes really cool because if an attacker gains access to this, one, you should be alerted that they've gained access. But two, the attacker thinks they've hit the mother lode, right? They have access to all this data, and they're going to spend time on it, which is time for you to go harden your real systems or figure out a plan to get rid of this person. Having this real data makes it more difficult to detect an attack or detect that it is a honeypot from the hacker's point of view. They think it's real data, and if you've done a real good job of creating your data in a way that makes it indistinguishable from the real data, they're going to spend time on it, and they're not going to be very aware that they're on a honeypot. On the flip side, with the low interaction honeypots, if an attacker breaks in, there's not going to be a whole lot. They might be a little bit more suspicious as to what this machine is doing on your network. Now, it's not going to, alert, say, hey, I'm a honeypot, you got caught, but it's still going to be something that might make the attacker think twice. With the high interaction honeypots, you're going to get a lot deeper insights into what the attacker is after. If they break into your fake payroll system and they're looking at employee information, you know that that's what they're after. So that's something you might want to focus your energy on. With the low interaction honeypot, because you don't have the fake data on there, you're not really going to be able to tell. But again, what you want to know from the honeypot is, hey, someone is here, I need to go do something. And then deployment. There's going to be a big difference in the deployment and maintenance of the low and high interaction. Low interaction is typically going to be plug and play. Maybe you have to update some network settings, but really you should be able to plop it on your network, plug it in, give it the connections, and be good to go. And because there's not a whole lot of interaction you need to do with it, there's almost going to be zero maintenance. A good honeypot is going to update itself. It's going to be self-healing. It's going to take care of itself. But with the high interaction honeypots, it's going to be much more complicated to deploy. All the cool things that we like, that it simulates real activity, it can provide deeper insights into attacker actions. These are all things that you're going to have to take the time to, one, learn how the honeypot works, and two, get the fake data created. And that's going to involve getting people that are really good with data, getting a data scientist to look at your real data maybe and creating fake data off of it. And then because you have all these systems on there, it's going to be as expensive as to maintain as your real production systems. Anytime those things get updated, you're going to want to update this so that you have this parity between your real systems and your fake systems that an attacker wouldn't be able to tell the difference. So we offer a honeypot, and it is a low interaction honeypot because we really think that hits the sweet spot between getting an attacker to inadvertently alert that they're on your network with the cost. But there are some key features that we think all honeypots should have. One is open by default. A honeypot should trigger on anything that is talking to it, right? So you want it to be as open as possible. Our honeypots by default ship with all ports open. This means that if anyone is talking to it for any reason, it's going to raise an alert. Whitelisting, you're going to want your honeypots to definitely have whitelisting capabilities. Unfortunately, there's just going to be things on your network that are going to have to talk to certain things, and there's really no way to shut it off. And that's an issue with the vendor that you'd have to take care of. But to reduce false positives, you're going to want some kind of whitelisting capability. Custom profile support. We get a lot of people are very interested in this, and this kind of mimics what the high interaction honeypot does, where this will give you the ability to open and close certain ports to make it look like you're something. If you know that, for example, if you know that an Xbox will have a certain set of ports open, and you want to pretend like your honeypot is an Xbox, you should be able to tell it, hey, open up these same ports, and then if an attacker scans it, they might think, hey, this is an Xbox, let me go try to do some attacks specific to Xbox on here. We don't really recommend you do this. We think it should be as open as possible. You know, let anyone who wants to talk to it so that you can raise that alert as early as possible. And then being passive. We think all honeypots should be passive. We don't think it should be going out and talking to different machines on your network. The reason for this is you want that honeypot to sit there as quietly as possible until it's talked to by someone. And you should know with your whitelist capability, with your whitelisting, that anything that's talking to it that's not on the whitelist is an issue. And at that point, you want an alert raised to you. So why do they work? Why do honeypots stop attackers? If you get some time, you should check out the webinar that John Gomez, our CEO, did with Hector Monsignor, who is an ex-anonymous hacker. He got caught by the FBI, and now he works as a consultant for them, and he does some Red Hat pen testing and things like that. But basically, he talks about the way that he used to break into these big systems. And for all attackers, there's typically two ways that you do this. One is you execute your own code. Think ransomware, right? An attacker breaks into your network, they have some code they want to execute, they run it, and hopefully they go out and infect as many computers as possible. The problem with this is that the network you're targeting might have some behavioral monitoring in place, where if the machine that you're on trips this behavioral monitoring, there's a good chance that you get quarantined and blocked off, and there goes your attack. So, which is real good as a defending network, but as an attacker, that's no good. So what a lot of attackers will do is something called live off the land, where they'll use existing machines and valid processes to gather information and move around your network. Basically what this means is if you break into, let's say, a payroll system again, the payroll system is probably going to talk to the accounting department, right? So for an attacker on that payroll system, talking to the payroll or accounting department is going to be a normal process. So it's not really going to raise any alarm bells. If you move from accounting, you can probably get to some kind of patient information because you need to know how to bill patients, right? So now you've completely moved undetected in terms of monitoring behavior from payroll all the way to patient information. But ultimately, there's probably going to be a target that you're after. And as an attacker, you're going to need to scan that network. And that's where the honeypot comes in. Again, think about your passive honeypot, just sitting there, not doing anything. This attacker is going to try to figure out what's on this network, where do I go next? And if when they do that scan, they trip the honeypot. And this is where it becomes super effective. It's just a big cause and effect, right? That honeypot is touched and an alert is issued. So let's talk about some things you can do today in your organization to figure out how you would fare against an attacker or a group of attackers coming after your network. Really, the best way is try to make it a game. Think about some of the attacks that have happened in the media the last few years. Unfortunately, there's no shortage of them. And pretend like it happened to you. And you can think about it like a mini tabletop simulation, right? You don't need to block off a day or two or however long it would take for a tabletop simulation. Block off 4 hours. Grab all the different people that are involved. Grab IT, biomed, clinical engineering, doctors, nurses, really anyone that would be affected or be in the path of this ransomware or this attack. Get them in a room, see how they would respond to it. Figure out where there are knowledge gaps, see where people do well, see where people don't do well, see where your policies and procedures work, and more importantly, where they don't work or where you don't have any. And as you're going through, take notes on all of those. And at the end, think about what you can do from that, what you've learned on what are some immediate next steps that you can take. Really make it fun. There's a lot of attacks and you know, it's a little scary, but it is a really good way to kind of understand where you're at and how you would really do. Another option is called the pyramid of pain game. It's kind of similar to that mini tabletop simulation, but basically you're breaking down each attack into these different steps. And it should kind of get harder as you go up the pyramid, but at each step you're asking these 3 things, right? How would we detect this? How would we know that this is happening? And what would we do? this isn't exactly, hey, this is what actually do. This is ideally what you would want to do. And really, it's kind of the point of both of these is to kind of allow you to find out where things fail and where you can improve on them. So just to summarize, don't underestimate your attacker. It's not just some greasy guy sitting in a basement typing away. You're dealing with huge organizations with billions of dollars in operating budget. Take a look at deploying honeypots. Low interaction or honeypot, whatever best fits your needs, they can be really, really powerful in bringing that 197-day number down because they need to move around. They're eventually gonna have to scan, and hopefully they trip that honeypot. Test your response. Make it fun. We just talked about it. Maybe keep honeypots in the back of your mind. As you're doing that mini tabletop simulation, maybe think, hey, if I had a honeypot in the scenario, would that have helped alert someone that much quicker? Would I have figured out that there's an attacker that much sooner with a honeypot? Now, if you're not 100% sure how to get started with the tabletop simulation or the mini tabletop simulations, we do offer a bunch of different advisory services like tabletop simulation. We have pen testing, incident response, threat hunting, a lot of good information. If you're not sure where to get started or you've done it and you want to take a deeper dive, really good things. We do also offer a full stack solution called Sensato Nightingale. It encompasses the detection, response, and compliance part of our platform all in one. It is fully integrated and it's monitored by the CTOC, which are an awesome team of eyes on glass people who will monitor your alerts for you. If you have any questions about that, you could always reach out to us at info@sensato.co. But I'll pause for a second. And Laura, I'm not sure if we have any questions that have come in.
We did have one question come in. It's how long does it take to deploy a honeypot?
Okay, so that's a good question. It's going to depend on what kind of honeypot you're talking about, right? We talked about the low and high interaction honeypots. For the low interaction honeypots, it can be anywhere between 5 minutes to maybe like an hour or two. I think with our honeypots, we've deployed one in 5 minutes and it was alerting in 15. But as a general case, I would say budget maybe an hour or two just to get everything set up and ready to go. With the high interaction honeypots, it's going to be a little bit more hefty. It's going to be somewhat of a project. Again, it's going to depend on how complicated your setup is, but if you're setting up a parity of your production system with fake data, you're looking at anywhere between a couple of days to a couple of weeks, depending on how skilled your staff is and how much time and effort you can dedicate to getting that deployed. Anything else, Laura?
No more questions at this time.
All right, cool. So coming up tomorrow, we do have day 4 of our webinar with Kelly Watson, our Director of Service Solutions. She's going to be talking to you about how do you respond when you get a threat alert. Part of that is going to be with the honeypots, right? How do you respond when you get a honeypot alert? Which will be going into a lot more with any kinds of alerts that you're getting on your network. So again, that's going to be up at 11 a.m. Eastern time tomorrow. And that is it. Again, if you guys have any questions or you think of something later on, feel free to reach out to us at info@sensato.co. And that is all.